Part IV, Chapters 7, 8, and 9 of Charles Rex by Ethel M. Dell. This recording is in the public domain. 7. The Refugee. It was by no means characteristic of Jake to linger on a quest which had already proved fruitless, but he was a man who possessed acquaintances in almost all parts of the world, and Paris was no exception. For the rest of the day after leaving Saltash he was philosophically occupied in seeking out old friends. Eventually he dined at a restaurant, and betook himself to the station to catch the night train to Calais. It was all one to Jake whether he travelled by night or by day, so wholly accustomed was he to adapt himself to circumstances. Maud was wont to say with a smile that the luxuries of decent living were utterly thrown away upon him. He was a man who scarcely noticed physical discomfort. He could sleep under practically any conditions. Walking solidly down the platform, carrying his own baggage, his thoughts were completely astray from his surroundings. They had reverted to the memory of the girlish figure he had seen that morning seated on a table, swinging one leg in studied nonchalance while every line was instinct with defiance. Yes, she had defied him, but deep in her heart she had feared, how she had feared, that Saltash would fail to hold her against him. Again a deep compassion came over Jake, stirring the very depths of him. Poor little girl, flung to and fro as flotsam in the cruel surf of life's breakers. He had done his best to deliver her, but fate had been against him. Fate had ordained that she should be the victim of this man's caprice, the slave of impulses which might or might not be her destruction. It was as if he watched her trying to walk on a quicksand, and he was powerless to help her. Saltash had defeated him, and he had no insight into his motives. Unstable, baffling, irresponsible as a monkey that swings from tree to tree, he had snatched his prize, and even Jake, who knew him better than most, could only speculate as to whether he would carry it high above disaster, or tire and idly fling it away. Some vagrant sense of honor seemed to have actuated him so far, but never yet had he known such a motive to last for long. The man's face was beyond him, too fantastic for comprehension. He recognized that he was capable of greatness, but very few were the occasions on which he had achieved it. If the motive power were lacking in this instance, Toby's chances were indeed small. He found an empty carriage and threw his belongings on to a seat. The train was not a favorite one, and there would be no crowd. He had some minutes to wait, and he lighted his pipe and began to pace the platform unencumbered. A few travellers straggling by eyed him with some interest. He was not a man to be passed unnoticed. The massive, thick-set shoulders had a bulldog strength that must have marked him in any crowd. His height was unremarkable, but there was power in every dominant line of him. He had the free carriage of one accustomed to the wide places of the earth. He took small note of his fellow travellers, being engrossed in his own thoughts. He wondered how Maud would regard the situation, and half wished she had been with him to deal with it; for Maud possessed undoubted influence over Saltash. He reflected that she was probably the only person in the world who did. He had strolled almost to the barrier, and was in the act of turning back, when some impulse for which he could not afterwards account, induced him to pause and take stock of the passengers passing through. The train was almost due to start, and there was some slight confusion and a quickening of feet on the platform. He realized that he ought to be going back to his own carriage, but something stayed him. He stood still, his keen eyes searching the hastening figures. And so standing, in a moment his attention was focused upon a girl in a blue cloak, who came towards him at a run, evidently intent upon catching the train. She passed him swiftly without seeing him, almost brushed against him. And behind her came a dark man with black moustache and imperial, following her closely with an air of proprietorship. Jake wheeled in his tracks, for a second amazed out of all composure; but an instant later he was in pursuit. He had had but a fleeting glimpse of her face, and the blue cloak was quite unfamiliar to him. But there was no mistaking the boyish freedom of her gait, the athletic swing of her as she turned and leaped into a compartment that her companion opened for her. The black-browed Italian was in the act of following when Jake arrived. The realization of another hand upon the door was the first intimation that reached him of the Englishman's presence. He turned and looked into a pair of red-brown eyes that regarded him with the utmost steadiness, as a quiet voice made slightly drawling explanation. "This lady is a friend of mine," said Jake Bolton. "I should like a word with her." The Italian looked murderous for a moment, but he gave ground almost in spite of himself. Perhaps the calm insistence of the other man's bearing warned him at the outset of the futility of attempting any other course of action. Jake was actually in the carriage before he could jerk out a word of protest. "Sapristi! You go too far," he blustered then. But Jake was already confronting the girl who had started up at his coming and stood facing him white and shaken. He spoke, still quite quietly, even gently, but in the tone that no delinquent ever heard unmoved. "Say," he said, "are you playing the game?" She put up a hand to her throat. His sudden coming had unnerved her and she had no words. But her quivering face and tragic eyes were more than sufficient answer for Jake. He had dealt with sudden emergencies before, and he treated this one with characteristic decision. "You've no business here," he said, "and you know it. If you can't stick to the man you've married, come home with me to Maud." She made a sharp gesture toward him, as if on the verge of falling, and as sharply recovered herself. "Oh, how I wish I could," she breathed. Jake's hand, perfectly steady, full of sustaining strength, closed with authority upon her arm. "That's settled, then," he said. "Come now." But at this point the Italian burst furiously in upon them with a flood of unintelligible language that made all further speech impossible. Jake glanced momentarily over his shoulder as if disturbed by the buzzing of some insect, then with unruffled composure turned back to the girl. His eyes looked straight into hers for perhaps 10 seconds, then in the same purposeful fashion he set her free and deliberately turned upon the man who raged behind him. As he did so, there came a shouting and banging of doors along the platform, and the train began to move. Jake's massive shoulders braced themselves. Without words, he seized the raving Italian in a grip there was no resisting, swept him, as a sudden gale sweeps a leaf, across the compartment, sent him with a neat twist buzzing forth upon the platform, and very calmly shut the door and came back. Then there came a wild shriek of laughter from Toby, and she doubled up in her corner with hysterical mirth, gasping and gasping for breath, till he sat squarely down beside her and pulled her into the circle of his arm. "Easy, my girl, easy," he said. "We're not going to have an exhibition at this stage. You keep a stiff upper lip till you feel better." But the stiff upper lip was rather painfully lacking on that occasion. She very soon ceased to laugh, but for a long time thereafter she lay sobbing and shuddering like a little terrified animal against his breast while the train rushed on through the night. He was very gentle with her. Jake's stock of patience was practically limitless, and he and Toby had always had a certain comradeship between them. But when she grew calmer at last, he began to talk in the quiet, direct fashion habitual to him. "Say now, you've had a bit of a facer over this, but you needn't be frightened. You're safe enough from that damned Italian, anyway, and you'll find me a better refuge than he is, if that's what you're wanting." She shivered and pressed closer. "You don't know what you're in for," she whispered piteously. "That so?" said Jake, unmoved. "Well, maybe you'd like to enlighten me." But Toby shook her head with a sob. "I just couldn't, Jake. Do you mind?" Jake considered the point with slightly drawn brows. "I guess there's no hurry," he decided at length. "We'll get home first, anyway. That's the main point. You won't be sorry to get back to Maud, I take it?" She answered him with a swift and passionate fervor that spoke more clearly than any words of the anguish of her soul. "Oh, Jake, I wish I'd died before I left her." Jake's brows contracted more decidedly, but he said nothing further on the subject. Only after a moment or two he patted her shoulder reassuringly. "I'll take care of you," he said. "You go to sleep." 8. The Turning Point. "You've brought her back," said Bunny in amazement. "You've actually brought her back. Here, Jake. Not here." "It was the only thing to do," said Jake, between puffs of his pipe. "I'm sorry on your account, but well, you can keep out of her way." Bunny's face was flushed. He stood on the hearth and stared down at Jake with a troubled countenance. "But you won't be able to keep her," he protested after a moment. "Charlie will come and get her away again, as soon as he knows. He's such a wily devil." "He does know," said Jake. "He knows? Who told him?" "I told him," said Jake. "You told him? What the devil for? I don't understand you, Jake." Bunny's tone had a touch of fierceness in it, almost of challenge. Jake's eyes came up to him with absolute steadiness. "I told him," he said deliberately, "because he is the one person who has a right to know. He is her husband." "I don't believe it," said Bunny, violently. "He'd never marry her. It was a damned trick if he pretended to." "No," Jake said, "it was not a trick. He has married her, and it's up to him to make the next move." "But what on earth for?" demanded Bunny. "What made him do such a thing?" "God knows," said Jake, with a certain sombreness. "He did it. That's all I know." Bunny stamped round in a sudden fury and began to pace the room. "I suppose he did it to defeat me. Did he actually think I should want her after Bunny!" Swift and sharp as a whiplash, Jake's voice cut across the words. "Stop that. Pull up and sit down." Bunny wheeled and came back in silence. His face was deadly pale, but he sat down on the edge of the table by Jake's side. Jake reached out a leisurely hand and gripped him by the knee. "Between you and me, my son," he said, "I don't think you came into the reckoning at all. I can't tell you exactly what happened, because I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that Saltash married her from a somewhat stronger motive than just to put you out of the running. As you say, he could have done that without taking all that trouble. He's treated you damn badly, I admit, but it's just possible he couldn't help himself, and anyway I don't think he's hurt you seriously, except in the place where you keep your pride." "You think I didn't love her," broke in Bunny, moving restlessly under his hand. Jake's eyes had the glimmer of a smile as he met the boy's hot look. "I think you don't love her now, anyway, Bunny," he said. "You're quite right," said Bunny, shortly. "I don't. I never want to see her again, now I know what she is." "You don't know," said Jake. "She has always been an unknown quantity to you. That's why I've always felt doubtful about you. Guess you never loved her quite enough, boy. That was your trouble." "Didn't love her?" ejaculated Bunny. Jake nodded. "Or you'd have understood her better, stood by her better." "I'd have loved her fast enough if she'd loved me," protested Bunny. "But that scoundrel always came first with her. I never had a chance." "Oh, yes, you had." Again the faint smile showed for an instant in the elder man's eyes. "Not much of one, perhaps, but you had a chance. If she'd been quite sure of you, she wouldn't have run away." "Wouldn't she? Then she can't be very sure of Saltash, either." Bunny spoke with a certain gloomy triumph. Jake blew forth a cloud of smoke and watched it rise thoughtfully. "I'm waiting for Saltash," he said. "I've got him on test." "You believe in him?" questioned Bunny, contemptuously. Jake's eyes remained fixed. "I believe," he said slowly, "that there comes a turning point in every man's life, whatever he's been, when he either makes good or throws in his hand altogether. I've been through it myself, and I know what it means. It's Saltash's turn now." "Oh, rot, Jake." Bunny turned on him with the old boyish admiration shining in his eyes. Why, you've made good every time. Just about as often as Charlie has done the other thing." "No." Jake spoke without elation. "I did make good, but I went through hell first, and I very nearly failed. It may be the same with him. If so, well, poor devil, he has my sympathy." "You can't be sorry for a hound like Saltash," remonstrated Bunny. Jake turned squarely and faced him. "Well, there you're wrong, Bunny," he said. "I reckon I'm sorrier for him than I am for you. You've got a clean record, and you'll win out and marry Sheila Melrose. But Saltash well, he's got a damn heavy handicap, and if he pulls off this, it'll be one of the biggest events I've ever seen. Say, what's the matter?" Bunny had sprung to his feet. He stood looking at Jake with an expression half startled and half indignant. "Jake! You beast! What made you say that?" he demanded. "What?" said Jake, and began to smile openly. "Well, it's pretty near the mark, isn't it? I saw which way the wind was trying to blow some time ago. Mean to say you didn't?" Bunny swung upon his heel. "Confound you!" he said, and was silent for several seconds. Jake smoked imperturbably on. He knew all the workings of Bunny's mind with the sure intuition of long intimacy. When finally the boy spoke again without turning, he almost knew what he would say. "Think I'm very despicable, Jake?" The question had a shamed and sullen ring. Bunny's head was bent. He was examining a little china figure on the mantelpiece with nervous concentration. Jake arose without fuss or preliminary, and pushed a brotherly arm round the bent shoulders. "Guess you've never been that, sonny," he said very kindly. "But you take an old man's advice and go a bit slow. She'll think all the better of you for it." "She'll never look at me," muttered Bunny, gripping the hand that pressed his shoulder without raising his eyes. "Oh, won't she?" said Jake. "I've seen her look at you more than once, and the old General, too. Reckon they both thought you were throwing yourself away on Toby, and maybe they had some reason to think so. Anyway, she never was your sort. I seem to remember telling you so once." "I was a fool," said Bunny, and then in a moment straightened himself and looked Jake in the eyes. "It wasn't Toby's fault," he said with abrupt generosity. "She didn't want to get engaged to me. I made her. I knew, all along, she wasn't very keen. But I thought I loved her enough to make it all right. I was wrong. I didn't." "Beginning to know better?" suggested Jake, with a smile. "Beginning to realize what a fool I've been," said Bunny, ruefully. "You don't think I've done for myself, then? Think I've still got a chance?" "Sure thing," said Jake. "But go carefully. You've got a fence or two to clear before you get home." He paused a moment, then gave him a kindly hand grip. "Say, Bunny," he said, "there's nothing despicable about making a mistake. It's only when things go wrong and we don't play the game that there's anything to be ashamed of. I've always been ready to stake my last dollar that you'd never do that." "Oh, man," Bunny said, in swift embarrassment, "that shows how much you know about me." Jake stooped to knock out the ashes of his pipe in the fender. "What I don't know about you, my son," he said, "ain't worth a donkey's bray, I reckon, so you can shut your mouth on that. I'm going back to Maud now. Any messages?" "Yes." Bunny was standing up very straight. His eyes were shining. "Love to Maud, of course. I shan't come round at present. But tell Toby that when I do she needn't be worried over anything. We're all square. Tell her that." "I will," said Jake. He turned to the door, then paused, looking back. "And say," he said, "don't you butt in with Saltash. Just leave him to manage his own fate. He's riding a bucking horse, but I've a notion he'll yet make good, if he can." "He's a rum devil," said Bunny. "All right. I shan't interfere." After Jake had gone he sat down and pulled a letter from his pocket. All the lines of perplexity smoothed out of his boyish face as he read it. It was the letter of a woman who had written because she wanted to write, not because she had anything to say, and Bunny's eyes were very tender as he came to the end. He sat for a space gazing down at the signature, and at length, with a gesture half shamefaced, he put it to his lips. "Yes, I've been a fool, Sheila," he said softly, "but, thank heaven, I was pulled up in time. And I shan't ever make that mistake again." Which was, perhaps, exactly what the writer had meant him to say. 9. Larpent. "Shall we dig a deep, deep hole for you to lie in?" asked Eileen, with serious violet eyes upraised. "And then cover you right up to your head so as you won't catch cold?" chimed in Molly. "Betty dig too! Betty dig too!" cried the youngest of the party with zest. "Zite up over Auntie Toy's head." "What an excellent idea!" said Toby with resignation. She sat down in the golden afternoon sunshine that flooded the beach, the three children buzzing happily about her, and rested her chin on her hands. The blue eyes that dwelt upon the misty horizon were very tired. They had the heavy look of unshed tears, and all the delicate colour was gone from her face. Her slight figure drooped pathetically. She sat very still. All the elasticity of youth seemed to have gone out of her. Once or twice a sharp sigh caught her that was almost like a sob. Betty's shrill voice at her side recalled her from her dreams. "Betty tired now, auntie Toy. Betty tummin' to sit down." She turned and took the child upon her lap, with a fondling touch and tender words. Betty pillowed a downy head against her neck and almost immediately fell asleep. Eileen and Molly laboured on at their self-imposed task in the autumn sunshine, and Toby returned to her dreams. Perhaps she had also begun to doze, for the day was warm and sound sleep had forsaken her of late, when the falling of a shadow aroused her very swiftly to the consciousness of someone near at hand whose approach she had not heard. She controlled her quick start before it could awaken the sleeping child, but her eyes as they flashed upwards had the strained, panic-stricken look of a hunted animal. She made an almost involuntary movement of shrinking, and the blood went out of her lips, but she spoke no word. A man in a navy blue yachting suit stood looking down at her with blue-grey eyes that tried to be impersonal but failed at the slight gesture of hers. "You needn't be afraid of me, heaven knows," he said. "I'm not," said Toby promptly, and flung him her old boyish smile. "I wasn't expecting just you at that moment, that's all. Sit down and talk, Captain, if that's what you've come for." Apparently it was. He lowered himself to the sand beside her. But at once, as by irresistible habit, his eyes sought the horizon, and he sat and contemplated it in utter silence. Toby endured the situation for a few difficult seconds, then took brisk command. "Why don't you have a smoke?" she said. "You'd find it a help." He put his hand mechanically into his pocket and took out his cigarette case. His eyes came back out of space as he did so, and rested upon the fair-haired child in the girl's arms. "So you've come back to the old job," he said. Toby nodded. "Yes, Jake's doing. I'm waiting to be divorced." He made a slight movement of surprise, but his face remained inscrutable. "You'll have to wait some time for that." Toby tilted her chin with a reckless gesture that was somehow belied by the weariness of her eyes. "That wasn't what you came to talk about, then?" she suggested, after a pause. "No." Larpin's voice had a curious, almost deprecating quality. "I came to bring you a message." "A message?" She started slightly, and in a moment the defiance went out of her attitude. She turned towards him. Who is it from?" Larpin's far-seeing eyes came gravely to meet her own. "From Roselle d'Aubigny," he said. "Ah!" A quick shiver went through Toby. She averted her look. "I don't want to hear it," she said. "I've got to deliver it," said Larpin, with a hint of doggedness, "and you've got to listen. But you needn't be afraid. It isn't going to make any difference to you. The time has gone for that." He paused, but Toby sat in silence, her face bent over Betty's fair head. When he spoke again, his eyes had gone back to the quiet sea and the far horizon. There was a hint of pathos about him, albeit his face was grim. "It may have surprised you to see me in Paris with her," he said. "I'm not the sort of a man that runs after that type of woman. But I went to Roselle because she was dying, and because once, long ago, she was my wife." A faint sound came from Toby, but she still did not speak or lift her face. Larpin went on, steadily, unemotionally. "She went wrong, ran away, while I was at sea. She was too young to be left alone. Afterwards, too late, a child was born. She told me the night before she died that the child was mine." "Good God!" said Toby under her breath. He went on, grimly monotonous. "I never knew of the child's existence. If I had known, it might have made a difference. But it's too late now. She wanted me to find and protect the child. I promised to do my best, and when I found her I was to tell her one thing. Roselle prayed for her child's forgiveness every day." He ceased to speak, and there fell a silence, long and painful. The tide was turning, and the soft wash of tiny breakers came up the sand. Sea and sky mingled together, opalescent in the misty sunlight. The man's eyes gazed without seeing. Toby's were full of tears. He turned at last and looked at her, then, moved by what he saw, laid an awkward hand upon her arm. "I'm not asking anything from you," he said, "but I'd like you to know I'd have done more, if I'd known." She threw him a quick look, choking back her tears. It's rather funny, isn't it?" she said, with a little crack of humour in her voice. I'm very sorry, Captain Larpent." "Sorry?" he said. "For you," said Toby, with another piteous choke. "I've been foisted on to you so often, and you've hated it so." "That's the tragic part of it," said Larpent. She brushed away her tears and tried to smile. "I wonder you bothered to tell me," she said. His hand closed almost unconsciously upon her arm. "I had to tell you," he said. "It's a thing you ought to know." He hesitated a moment, then concluded with obvious effort. "And I wanted to offer you my help." "Thank you," whispered Toby. That's very generous of you." She gulped again, and recovered herself. "What do you want to do about it?" she said. "Do? Well, what can I do?" He seemed momentarily disconcerted by the question. Toby became brisk and businesslike. "Well, you don't want to retire and live in a cottage with me, do you? We shouldn't either of us like that, should we?" "There's no question of that now," said Larpent, quietly. "Your home is with your husband, not with me." Toby flinched a little. "My home isn't anywhere, then," she said. "When I left him it was for good." "Why did you leave him?" said Larpent. Toby's lips set in a firm line, and she made no answer. Larpent waited a few moments, then, "It's no matter for my interference," he said, "but it seems to me you've made a mistake in one particular. You don't realise why he married you." Toby made a small passionate movement of protest. "He ought not to have done it," she said, in a low voice. "I ought not to have let him. I thought I could play the part. I know now I can't, and he knows it too." "I think you'll have to play the part," Larpent said. "No." She spoke with vehemence. "It's quite impossible. He has been far too good, far too generous. But it shan't go on. He's got to set me free. If he doesn't " She stopped abruptly. "Well, if he doesn't?" Larpent's voice was unwontedly gentle, and there was compassion in his look. Toby's eyes avoided his. "I'll find a way for myself," she said, almost inarticulately. Larpent's fingers tightened again upon the thin young arm. "It's no good fighting fate," he said. "Why has it become impossible? Just because he knows all about you? Do you suppose that, or anything else, is going to make any difference at this stage? Do you imagine he would let you go for that?" Toby's arm strained against him. "He'll have to," she declared stubbornly. "He doesn't know all about me, either, any more than you do. And he's never going to know." Her voice shook stormily. She glanced about her desperately, as if in search of refuge. The child in her arms stirred and woke. Larpent got up as if the conversation were ended. He stood for a moment irresolute, then walked across to the two little girls digging busily a few yards away. Eileen greeted him with her usual shy courtesy. "Won't you wait a little longer?" she said. "We're very nearly finished." "Nearly finished," echoed Molly. "Isn't it a booful big hole?" "What's it for?" asked Larpent. Toby's voice answered him. She had risen and followed him. It had an odd break in it, the sound of laughter that is mingled with tears. "They're digging a hole to bury me in. Isn't it a great idea?" He wheeled and looked at her. There was no sign of tears in the wide blue eyes that met his own. Yet he put his hand on her shoulder with the gesture of one who comforts a child. "Before I go," he said, "I want to tell you something no one has told me, but that I've found out for myself. There is only one thing on this earth worth having, only one thing that counts. It isn't rank or wealth or even happiness. It swamps the lot, just because it's the only thing in God's creation that lasts. And you've got it. In heaven's name, don't throw it away." He spoke with the simplicity and strength of a man who never wastes his words, and having spoken, he released her without farewell, and turned away. Toby stood quite motionless for several seconds, watching him. Then, as he did not look round, hurriedly she addressed the eldest child. "Take care of Betty a moment, Eileen darling. I shall be back directly." And with the words she was gone, like an arrow in pursuit. He must have heard her feet upon the sand, but he did not turn. Perhaps his thoughts were elsewhere, for when at the quick pressure of her hand on his arm he paused to look at her, she saw that his eyes were very sad. "Well?" he said, with the glimmer of a smile. "Well, 'Toinette?" She clasped her two hands upon his arm, holding it very tightly, her face uplifted. "Please, I want to thank you," she said breathlessly. "You have been so very good." He shook his head. "I have done nothing," he said. "Don't thank me." She went on with nervous haste. "And it does make a difference to me. I'm glad, I know, though it must have been a great shock to you." "It would have been a much worse shock if it had been anyone else," he said. "Would it? How nice of you." Her lip trembled. "Well, then, I'm glad it wasn't." She began to walk with him. "Do you mind telling me? Did you forgive her?" "Yes," he said very quietly. A quick shiver went through her. "Then I must, too," she said. "At least, I must try. I loved her once, you know, before I began to understand." "Everyone loved her," he said. "But life is very difficult, isn't it?" she urged, rather tremulously. "Your life has been," he said. She nodded. "One can't help making mistakes, even bad ones, sometimes." "You've just made one," he said. She faced him valiantly. "Ah, but you don't understand. You can't throw away what you've never had, can you?" "What you've got," he corrected, gravely. "Yes, you can." She flung out her hands with a wide gesture. "But I haven't got it. I never had it. He took me out of pity. He never pretended to love me." "No," said Larpent, with grim certitude. "He isn't pretending this time." She stared at him, wide eyed, motionless. "Not pretending? What do you mean? Please, what do you mean?" He held out his hand. "Good bye," he said abruptly. "I mean just that." Her lips parted to say more, but something in his face or action checked her. She put her hand into his. "Good bye," she said. He held her hand for a moment, then, moved by some hint of forlornness in the clear eyes, he bent, as he had bent at the castle on that summer evening weeks before, and lightly touched her forehead with his lips. "Oh, that's nice of you," said Toby quickly. "Thank you for that." "Don't thank me for anything," said Larpent. "Play a straight game, that's all." And with the words he left her finally, striding away over the sand with that careless sailor's gait of his, gazing always far ahead of him out to the dim horizon. Perhaps as long as he lived his look would never again dwell upon anything nearer. End of Part 2, Chapters 7, 8, and 9.